Hi everyone, I'm here today to review possibly my joint most anticipated release of 2021, and that is You Love Me by Caroline Kepnes. This is the third book in the You series featuring Joe Goldberg. I received a free copy of this book from the publishers via NetGalley, and I was so excited about that, and it's taken me every inch of willpower to not read it when I got it, which was months ago, and save it till closer to the release date, which is actually today as you are watching this if you live in the UK, and I think it's out next week in the US. So as I said, this is the third book in a series. You cannot read this book without first reading the first two books in the series. Also, if you've watched the TV show and you think, that's fine, I can just read this book, I probably wouldn't. They're actually, the first season and the first book are very similar. The second book and the second season start to divert quite a bit. And so obviously the third season of the show isn't out yet, but I would guess that it's probably going to be totally different to what this book ended up being. So you're mixing two different stories entirely, essentially. If you aren't aware of what the You series is about, we follow Joe, who is a psychotic stalker, to put it mildly. You could also describe him as a serial killer. So if you're into that sort of stuff, I highly recommend going and reading the first two books. I have a review as well, a non-spoiler review for the second book, Hidden Bodies, which I filmed about 5 years ago, so it's a bit cringe, but I will link that in the cards and also the description down below in case you wanted to check that out. But yeah, anything from here on out, I might accidentally spoil stuff for the first two books. So if you haven't read those, I recommend not watching from here on onwards. I won't be spoiling You Love Me though. This will be a full non-spoiler review. So to give you a quick overview first, I was so desperate to pick this book up and so eager. So imagine my surprise when I struggled to get through it at times. Yes, this book was a bit of a disappointment for me. Now, I don't know whether I'd partly brought this on myself, because I wanted to originally reread books 1 and 2 before starting this one, but I never got around to doing that. I can't remember whether it was after the first chapter or the second chapter, I literally found myself there going, shit. I can't remember what the hell happened in Hidden Bodies. And because I've watched the TV show a lot more recently than what I've read the book, I was feeling beyond muddled. So I ended up looking up a summary online because I thought the book would ease me back into the series, and it didn't. So don't make that mistake. Reread at the very least Hidden Bodies before jumping into this one if you've not read it since release, because it was a rough time for me, let me tell you. I don't know as well whether it was just my reading mood, but this one just felt so much harder to get into than either of the two previous books in the series. The second person just felt really disjointed in this book. And I mean, the first book was written in this way, yet I didn't have any problems. This one I was struggling so much to just get to grips with the writing and get back into the writing, and it definitely had a strong impact on my enjoyment. As for plot, that didn't pull me in easily either. So I have a few issues with the plot. As I said, I will keep this spoiler free, so I will be quite vague on what I say, but it's no secret that at the end of the second book, Joe has got Love pregnant. And this makes for a whole new Joe in this book. And I didn't like this Joe. And I think that's partly my problem, because it's obvious that the direction Caroline Kepnes was going for was character development. We get a different Joe in this book. The development process that we follow with that works really well in terms of his development. And it was believable that this is the direction he could have been going in, but it was just really dull. To say I found myself a bit bored at times would probably be a slight understatement. And I found that the main reason for this was that I just thought that out of the three books, this one was the least dark. There isn't as much murder. there's quite a bit of psychological, really bad stuff going on in his head that you see through being in the second person. So it does still have an undercurrent of darkness, but it's nowhere near in the same levels as the first or the second book. And as I said, this different Joe just wasn't as fun to hang out with. That said, I did also have a great time with some of it. So I love a good unreliable narrator, and that is definitely what you get with Joe. So the second person aspect of this really threw that into another dimension with this book more than the first book ever did. So he'll be telling you something, like you'll see in his thoughts, and then like the next paragraph will be like, okay, that didn't actually happen. And you're like, so I was on board with that and that didn't actually happen, what the hell? And it just helps really emphasize just how unreliable he is. And you spend the rest of the book thinking, well, did this really happen? Is this happening, or is this an in your head thing? Which was a really fun aspect. I also enjoyed the whole discussion that is between the lines in this book of privacy and how mobile phones have had an impact on privacy. And I mean, one bit that really stood out that I noticed down was that iPhones have killed romance and turned us all into stalkers. And I mean, in my personal position, I can see that. I get frustrated sometimes if Luke's living on his phone. I'll be talking away to him and I'll be like, you've not listened to a single word I've said, because he's on his phone, whether he's on Instagram, whether he's on Facebook, he's not present in the slightest. So I sort of get that point of view, and I was finding myself thinking, yeah, Joe, I get you. I mean, while they turned us all into stalkers thing, I mean, come on, you're telling me you have never ever stalked someone's Facebook account, Instagram account, Twitter account, had a little snoop, zoomed a picture? These are all things that get brought up in the book in such a way that made me think, shit, I'm like Joe. I'm actually no better than Joe. I just don't kill people. And it was just done in such a clever way throughout the book. It's not just a chapter here, a chapter there. It's kind of an undertone throughout the book and was really clever. And in one scene, it also suggests, for example, spying on your partner's phone. And he was trying to justify it because he was like, well, I don't deliberately snoop. I just take a glance if she's left it open on the kitchen side. And it's like, yeah, I'd never deliberately pick Luke's phone up and look through it, but have I glanced at his screen occasionally? Of course I have. And he was trying to use this as a way of explaining that he's not the same person he was and that he's now bettered himself and that he isn't the creepy stalker he used to be, because he's just doing things that are now considered by most people as just normal behaviour. It just gives you so much to think about, doesn't it? I also really enjoyed how there were some comedic moments in this book, and specifically it related back to mainly the first book, but also it does link up with Hidden Bodies as well, and that cup of piss. Yes, that cup gets mentioned again because he has another experience with a cup, but this time it's coffee. And the things that were going through his head and comparing the two had me laughing out loud. So, like I said, the beginning of this review did start off a bit negative, but there were definitely fun parts that I thoroughly enjoyed. And that was definitely like a standout moment for me. I also enjoyed how Joe somehow manages to be very aware of other crime and serial killer type things. So, for example, I've recently been rereading and continuing the Dexter series of books, and he references Dexter. He references Killing Eve. I really liked how those were tied in. And I will say, my overall impression from this book, I did write down a note, once a stalker, always a stalker. And that's definitely true. You never lose the full essence of what and who Joe really is, even when he's trying to be this better person as he is now a dad. I'm not sure what I expected from this book because, as I said, it's been highly anticipated by me, so maybe I just hyped it up too much in my head. I don't know whether I didn't like the direction the story went in, as obviously the end of book 2, now that I've looked up a summary, leaves you in quite a precarious place. You don't know what's going to happen to Joe. The law has caught up with him, and so that did leave me wondering how things were going to go from here. And I don't think I liked the direction the story went in. I don't think it was bad, but I wasn't up for it. I wanted something different, I guess. And yeah, I don't know, it just wasn't there for it. This wasn't my favourite. That said, I will, if there are any more books, because the ending was kind of left in such a way where I'm not on a massive cliffhanger, but there could be another one. It could go either way. And I'd definitely read any more books that do come along. It's not that this book's totally put me off like Hidden Bodies did for some people, because some people really disliked that book. I happened to love it. I think I gave you 5 stars. I've given Hidden Bodies 5 stars. I've given You Love Me 3 stars, which saddens me greatly. I was hoping it would be a 4-star read. I was hoping the ending would bring some sort of redemption that would make me want to give it 4 stars. But it was just a bit average. So yeah, 3 stars sadly. And other than the obvious content warnings for things like murder and stalking, I think it's fair to mention that there's also a content warning for rape, though not explicitly, and also child abuse to an extent. Yeah, can't think of anything else massively. It's kind of difficult because, as I said, this book wasn't as dark as the first 2 were, but it might therefore have me overlooking something looking back. But I think that's all I have to say for this book today. So yeah, slightly sad I didn't enjoy it more than I did. As I said, maybe that's my own fault for hyping it up too much in my own head. But still, well worth checking out if you're a You fan. Meanwhile, I can't wait to see what direction the TV show goes in, to see how different that ends up being to this book. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this review. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe by clicking the image of me if you want to see more book reviews and other bookish content from me, and I will see you soon. Bye bye!